shed tears. Forgive me if when these days return to us. Forgive me if when these days return to us, you see that teardrops on my eyelid line, but you can't understand what my see. Each time they see her, I feel my heart die. I see her crushed between the door and wall. Ya Zahra, I see her crushed between the door and wall. Each time my eyelids close and crush my eyes, and as blood flows from...
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى، صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dear brothers and sisters, my dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, from the holy city of Karbala, in the vicinity of Sayyid al-Shuhada Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam and his brother Abi al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. We continue in our commemoration of the martyrdom of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. As we began our talk and our discussion last night regarding Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, we continue where we left off. The tragedy of Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha, this tragedy that is dismissed by some and is rejected and denied by others. There are some that say there was no tragedy. Nothing took place. Fatima al-Zahra died an ordinary death. There was no attack on her house. There was no aborting of her fetus. There was no physical abuse on Fatima al-Zahra. There was nothing. There are some that accuse us, followers of Ahlulbait, of making up lies and saying these are all Shia lies. None of this took place. Fatima al-Zahra died a regular death. Of course, and inshallah, and perhaps tomorrow night, we shall touch upon some Sunni sources, let alone Shia sources, that there was an attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra. Fatima al-Zahra was abused. There was a fetus, and that fetus was aborted by some. Anyhow, this tragedy that fell upon Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. And as we talked about why we commemorate this tragedy, why do we commemorate the nights of Fatimiyya? And we asked this question, isn't it a historical event? Why should we dig up history? Why should we dig events that occurred in history in that past? Why should we mention them again? Especially if such events divide Muslims. They create tension and divide. Why mention these events? We also ask the question that aren't there other historical figures other than Fatima Zahra alayhi salam? Why the emphasis on Fatima? Yesterday we gave a couple of answers. Tonight we continue in answering these questions. The tragedy that fell upon the heart of Fatima Zahra. This tragedy was the mother of all tragedies. When we study the lives of the Ahlulbait, especially the events that took place after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what happened? So many events occurred, so many incidents, so much oppression towards the Ahlul Bayt. One oppressive move after the next. What started it? What was the first effect? We believe that all these tragedies, all of these events that occurred to the Ahlul Bayt, they were a domino effect. One affected the other, the second affected the third affected the fourth. But which event and incident was the first effect that led to the other tragedies? We believe that it was the tragedy of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. If it was not for the attack on the house of Fatima, for the physical abuse that Fatima Zahra had to endure, aborting her fetus, these several attacks on Fatima Zahra, if it wasn't for this specific incident, other incidents would not have taken place. But it was this incident when some of the Sahaba, they had the audacity, I don't say courage, because it was a cowardly incident. The attack on the daughter of Rasulullah, this requires courage or bravery. It had absolutely, they didn't require any courage. It was a cowardly move. When a man, or rather should I say when several men, according to some narrations over 72 men, attack a woman, this is a cowardly act. This doesn't require any courage. This incident, it triggered a lot of other incidents. This incident that required a lot of audacity, it led them to deny the Khilafah. They denied the Khilafah and the successorship or the succession to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. It was denied because of that incident. Because they had the audacity to attack the house, this allowed them to develop more audacity to take the Khilafah away from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In broad daylight. It wasn't some sort of conspiracy behind the scenes, no. The Sahaba gathered at Saqifa in broad daylight and took the Khilafah from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. For 25 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen was refrained from the Khilafah, was abstained from the Khilafah. Rather, should I say that the Khilafah and the succession was abstained from Amir al-Mu'mineen? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen was not in need of the Khilafah. The Khilafah was in need of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? because of that first incident. Because they had the audacity to attack the house of Fatima, they had the audacity to keep Amir al-Mu'mineen away from the Khilafah. That event, that incident, the attack on the house, it was the domino effect. It triggered the domino effect. It triggered all the other events. What led to the 3 civil wars that Amir al-Mu'mineen had to fight? Was it not the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra that led them to attack Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam? What led to the assassination of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam? It was that first attack. What led to the poisoning of Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam? What led to the day of Ashura and the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Was it not these very first events? The attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra and the hijacking of the Khilafah and the meeting at Saqifa. That is why when Arabic poet, he says in a line of poetry, translated into English, he says that the arrow that pierced through the heart of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not shot from Karbala, it was shot from Saqifa. Over 50 years before Ashura, that arrow was shot from the city of Medina, from Saqifa, and it landed in the chest of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Thus, the tragedy of Fatima al-Zahra was the mother of all tragedies. It was the tragedy that led to all the other tragedies. It was the starting point. It opened the door for all the other tragedies that fell upon the Ahlulbait. Perhaps with this incident that occurred with Fatima al-Zahra, the attack on the house, there were some that tried to test the waters. They wanted to see what would be the reaction of the Ahlulbait if we attack on their mother, on their esteemed mother. They realized that this nation is a sleeping nation. We attack the daughter of their grandfather, yet no one rejects, no one rebels, no one objects, no one rebels. No one holds arms and decides to make a move. No, everyone remained quiet, even though they saw the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra, the daughter of their Prophet. When? Merely 2 days after the death of their Prophet. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would say, "Fatimatun bad'atun minni, man adaha faqad adani." Fatima al-Zahra is from me, she's a part of me. He who hurts her is hurting me. Even al-Bukhari mentions in his book Al-Jami' al-Sahih a narration by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إن الله يرضى لرضا فاطمة ويغضب لغضبها. Allah is angered to the anger of Fatima and is pleased if Fatima al-Zahra is pleased. This is in Bukhari. Yet in broad daylight, the house of Fatima al-Zahra is attacked, yet all Muslims remain quiet. Some people discovered that this nation is a sleeping nation. If we can attack the daughter of their Prophet, that means we can easily take away the Khilafah. We can easily do whatever we wish. We can change the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah had a specific adhan, we can change that adhan. Rasulullah would say, Hayya ala khair al-amal, we take that out. Instead, we insert as-salatu khairun min an-nawm. Rasulullah would pray with his hands down. Let's pray with our hands crossed. Let's put certain insertions in the salah. Who will object? No one will object. if they didn't object to us when we attacked the house of the daughter of the Prophet who had died 2 days ago, would they object if we changed some of the Islamic laws and some of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Of course not. That is why we say that the tragedy of Fatima al-Zahra was the mother of all tragedies. If this incident didn't take place, they wouldn't have the audacity to take away the Khilafah or to keep Amir al-Mu'mineen at home, to oppress him, to marginalize him, to assassinate him. Before assassinating him, to fight 3 wars against him, 3 battles, 3 civil wars against him, to kill his children, to have the battle of Ashura. None of this would have occurred. But it was this incident that opened the doors for all the other attacks, all the other tragedies, all the other mishaps that fell on the Ahlulbait. Even today, as we speak tonight from the city of Karbala, from the land of Iraq, a land that for the past 10 or 11 years has not seen any peace or stability. We heard news of the car bombing that occurred in Hilla, where tens, scores of innocent people were killed and hundreds were injured. Who is the cause? Let's talk about the original cause of these incidents, of these terrorist attacks, terrorist actions. Who taught these terrorists? Who taught them to spill blood in the name of religion? Who? Was it not the pioneers of Islam? Those who attacked the house of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam? Was the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra, was it not the first terrorist attack in Islam? Absolutely. It was the very first terrorist attack, and the victims were Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, who was first injured and then killed, and her fetus Muhsin. Muhsin was the very first casualty of terrorism in Islam. Terrorists today, they're learning from that act, which was done in the name of Islam. They came to seek allegiance for the Khalifa. It was done in the name of Islam, in the name of religion, in the name of Allah. And the same today, we see terrorists in Iraq, they're committing terrorist acts, they're killing, they're spilling blood, they're massacring men, women, children, innocent people in the name of Islam, in the name of Allah, in the name of religion. It's a domino effect. It all started from that day, from that first terrorist act that led to hundreds of thousands of other terrorist attacks. It's as simple as that. It's a domino effect. Furthermore, we can be assured that Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam wants us to hold majalis for her. She wants us to dedicate special days and special nights to commemorate her days, Ayyam al-Fatimiyya. You might ask me, where did Fatima al-Zahra say, hold majalis for me, or remember me? Remember me for several days and several nights and cry for me. And where? Is there a hadith? Is there a narration? Where did Fatima al-Zahra say commemorate the days of Fatima? I'll tell you. Fatima al-Zahra didn't need to tell us to commemorate these days and these nights, the days of Fatima. She did something even more powerful than that. How? She asked her husband, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, not to allow anyone to participate in her funeral. Who participated in the funeral of Fatima al-Zahra? Amir al-Mu'mineen, al-Hassan, wal-Hussein, Salman, Abu Dhar, and maybe 2 or 3 others. Who else participated? From the top Sahaba, who participated? None of them participated in the burial of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. This was her will. This was the will of Fatima al-Zahra. She told him, وَيَا ابْنَ الْعَمْ وَلَا تَشْهَدْ جَنَازَتِي هَؤُلَاءِ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُونِي وَلَا تَشْهَدْ جَنَازَتِي مِمَّنْ ظَلَمَنِي. Those who oppressed me, do not allow them to witness my burial and my janazah. This was a political statement by Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. This was a very powerful and important political statement. Why? Fatima al-Zahra wanted people to wake up in the morning and come and attend her burial. Because when Fatima al-Zahra died, all of the citizens of Medina came to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima. They wanted to participate in the burial. Amir al-Mu'mineen told his son al-Hassan, tell them that the burial has been postponed until further notice. The next day they came, they all wanted to participate. They saw that Fatima al-Zahra is already buried. Fatima al-Zahra wanted them to ask why. The daughter of the Prophet should receive the largest burial ceremony. Some of the Sahaba, some of the ordinary Sahaba, when they died, they received huge burial ceremonies. For example, Uthman ibn Mad'un, Sa'd ibn Ma'adh. These were, especially Sa'd ibn Ma'adh, received a huge burial. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa participated in his burial, in his funeral. In fact, when he was walking, he would tiptoe. They told him, why are you tiptoeing? He said, because of the angels that are walking in this burial. Thus people, the citizens of Medina, expected to participate in the burial of Fatima. Fatima al-Zahra was already buried. She wanted them to ask why. Why was she buried at night? For what reason? That is why, because Fatima al-Zahra was buried at night and not during the day, because no one participated in her burial ceremony except a handful, maybe 6 or 7 people, 6 or 7 men. We don't exactly know the date of her death. Was it 40 days after the death of Rasulullah? Was it 75 days? Was it 95 days? We're not sure, because most people didn't attend. Furthermore, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam asked Amir al-Mu'mineen that you pray over my body. Don't allow anyone else to pray. Don't allow anyone else to pray. While Abu Bakr was the Khalifa at the time. And it was customary that whoever dies in Medina, the Khalifa prays on that body. It is the Khalifa that prays on the body. Yet Abu Bakr did not pray on the body of Fatima al-Zahra. Fatima al-Zahra wants people to ask why. Why didn't Abu Bakr pray? Why was it that Ali ibn Abi Talib prayed on the body? What happened? What was the reason? She wants people to ask questions. She wants people to reach a conclusion that Fatima al-Zahra died while being angry with the government and with those in power. Also, Fatima al-Zahra asked Amir al-Mu'mineen to hide her grave. She said, don't tell people where my grave is. Let my grave remain a secret. Let it be hidden. Why? Every person who wants to die or is about to die would wish for his family members, his friends to come and visit their grave. come sit on the grave, sit close to the grave, recite some Quran. Didn't Fatima Zahra want Muslims to come and sit next to her grave and recite some Quran for her? Of course she does, but there's a greater plot, there's a greater purpose. Fatima Zahra alayhi salam didn't allow Amir al-Mu'mineen to expose her grave so that people who come to Medina for further generations, future generations, not just the people at her time, but all times, up till our time, people that go to Medina, she wants them to ask, where's the grave of Fatima Zahra? Here's the grave of Rasulullah, here's the grave of Abu Bakr and Umar. In Baqi', you have the grave of the 4 Imams of Ahlulbait. You have the grave of al-Abbas, the uncle of Rasulullah, Fatima bint Asad, the mother of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the uncles of the Prophet, the wives of the Prophet, Ibrahim, the son of the Prophet. Where's the grave of Fatima? No one knows. Is it inside the masjid? Is it in the Rawdah? Is it in Baqi'? Is it somewhere else? No one knows. She wants people to ask. She wants people to remember her. She wants people to raise questions every time they go to Medina, to raise questions. Where's the grave of Fatima? Fatima Zahra wants to be commemorated. Thus, Fatima Zahra had a political agenda. She hid her grave. She didn't want anyone to participate in her funeral. She didn't want anyone to pray over her body other than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. These were all political statements. We should think about this. Muslims, those who follow Ahlulbait or don't follow Ahlulbait. In fact, those who don't follow Ahlulbait should more think about these facts. That why don't we know where the grave of Fatima Zahra is? This is the daughter of the Prophet. It's not like she died outside of Medina, she died in the middle of the desert. No, she died inside the city. Why don't we know where her grave is? Furthermore, we commemorate the days and nights of Fatimiyya because we see the Ahlulbait commemorated it. We see that Fatima Zahra played a significant role in the lives of the Ahlulbait. They would remember her. They would weep for her. The case of Fatima Zahra was a sensitive case for the Ahlulbait. Amir al-Mu'mineen never forgot Fatima. Never. Towards the end of his life, Amir al-Mu'mineen was 61, 62. They brought him to dye his beard with henna. They gave him dye to dye his beard, which was fully white or fully gray. He said, no, thank you. He said, La zilna fi aza. We're still mourning. If you lose a loved one, when you're mourning someone, you don't decorate yourself, you don't dye your hair or go get a nice haircut or wear colorful clothing, because you're in a mourning period. You're mourning over the loss of someone. You're not in the mood for beautification. You're not in the mood to beautify yourself. This was over 30 years after the death of Fatima Zahra, yet Amir al-Mu'mineen says, La zilna fi aza. We are still mourning. Mourning whom? Mourning Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. For Amir al-Mu'mineen, this was a cause that should not die. The cause of Fatima Zahra should live. He would remember her. Amir al-Mu'mineen would always remember Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam would not forget his mother. He did not forget the tragedy of his mother. During the days of his imamah, when he went to Damascus, Muawiyah forced him to come to Damascus, to come to his palace, to his court, where several friends of Muawiyah were sitting with him, when Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam saw al-Mughira bin Shu'bah, he looked at him and he said, أنت الذي لطمت خد أمي فاطمة. You were the one that slapped my mother on her face. This was a tragedy on the hearts of the Ahlulbait. They never forgot the tragedy of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. The same way that they never forgot the day of Ashura. The day of Ashura was never forgotten. The tragedy of Fatima al-Zahra was never forgotten by the Ahlulbait. One day, a man by the name of al-Sukuni comes to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Al-Sukuni is a well-known narrator. He has a lot of narrations on fiqh, and he's debated by scholars as to whether he was a follower of Ahlulbait or not. Regardless, one day he came to visit Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He told him, Yabna Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me a daughter. My wife just gave birth to a daughter, and I named her Fatima. Imam al-Sadiq tells him, that's a beautiful name. However, I advise you, never shout in her face. Don't ever scream in her face. And don't ever slap her on her face. This was not just a simple advice. This was a political statement by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He was speaking of something else. He meant something else. He was alluding to his mother Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Thus, the Ahlul Bayt would commemorate and celebrate the life of Fatima al-Zahra. They would commemorate these days and these nights. It was not forgotten. Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam fought injustice. She died fighting for injustice, fighting against injustice, fighting against oppression, fighting against falsehood. That's why she sacrificed her life. Her life was taken because she stood for justice. She fought oppression. She saw that the right of her husband Amir al-Mu'mineen was taken away. And it wasn't just the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen, my dear friends. When the Khilafah was taken from Ali ibn Abi Talib, it wasn't just taken from Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'mineen was not just denied the Khilafah. All Muslims were denied the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. It wasn't the loss of Ali ibn Abi Talib. It was the loss of all the Muslims, probably even non-Muslims. Who had to lose? When Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't come to the Khilafah, he lost. Or the Muslims lost. Those who didn't have a leader like Ali ibn Abi Talib, who lost? Fatima al-Zahra fought for this right, boldly, courageously. She spoke out publicly. Thus, she lost her life. Out of courage and out of bravery. This is a lesson, my dear friends. When we commemorate Fatima al-Zahra, we are commemorating the stand against oppression, the stand against tyranny, the stand against injustice. It's for the same reason that we commemorate Ashura. Why do we commemorate Ashura year after year? Is it not because Imam Hussein alayhi salam stood against the oppression, fought slavery, fought tyranny, and stood for justice? Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam stood for the same exact causes. And the world needs to know, my dear friends. My dear brothers and sisters, the world needs to know what the nation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did to his family. The Quran tells the Prophet, tells him that tell your followers that for 23 years I served you. I ask for nothing in return. I don't ask for power, I don't ask for land, I don't ask for money. I just ask for one thing: love my kin. love my family members, show them gratitude, show them respect, honor them, love them. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. We ask that the followers of Rasulullah show love to the family, to his family, when they attacked the house of Fatima al-Zahra, when they slapped her on her face, when they aborted her fetus, when they ran into her house without her headscarf on. This was honoring and respecting and loving the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What honor was this? What respect was this? What love was this? The world needs to know what atrocities and tragedies, what sort of oppression was committed against the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This oppression needs to be made public. What this family, this holy household, had to endure from the followers of their father, of their grandfather. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. I ask nothing in return for my service other than love for my family. What sort of love did the family see from his nation? Stay with us, my dear brothers and sisters, tomorrow night as we continue, insha'Allah, as we continue our discussion and our commemoration on the life and death and message of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. We have a lot to gain from her and to learn from her and see her as an example, follow her example the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to follow the example of Asiyah bint Muzahim. وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابنني عندك بيتا في الجنة. As we talked about last night, Fatima al-Zahra is a greater exemplary figure. We shall continue to talk about her message, so stay with us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Forgive me if when these days return to us. Forgive me if when these days return to us. You see that teardrops on my eyelid line, but you can't understand what my see. Each time they see her, I feel my heart die. I see her crushed between the door and wall. Ya Zahra, I see